Hello there, Sir from 17 once again. This is some Berserk content, and it's going to be a little commentary to explain exactly what's happening with these videos that you're going to see appearing, and just some of my feelings on the game and my reasons for not covering it. So recently I decided to get back into Berserk. I read it a few years back. I read pretty much up to midway through the Golden Age part of the story. And for anyone who's obviously read Berserk knows that it doesn't really kick off until after that, even though perhaps that moment is some of the best moments of that entire manga. And I ended up going back, getting to the Eclipse and then powering it out and reading the entire thing. So I was in a big Berserk mood, and I wanted to see if there were any games, and lo and behold there were two. There was one for the Dreamcast called the Sword of the Berserk, Guts Revenge or something, and then there was this one which is on the PlayStation 2. It never came out of Japan. It's Berserk and then a massive Japanese title which is something along the lines of like fucking Millennium Falcon and the giant Holy Emperor with a big old sword or something silly. And they're both developed by a company called Ukes, who went on to do some wrestling games and a couple of, I think they were the UFC games. So they're a company that kind of knows what they're doing when they want to be. And I managed to get this on the emulator, and I did have some problems with it. They were mostly technical, and it's to do with the emulation. You'll notice you can't see my HP and you can't see the HUD for the items that you can use. It's because when I put the game into a different plugin mode where those are all visible, the game looks like dog shit, because it's not. It's like native, what it would have looked like on a PS2, eye-blurringly bad. And the frame rate for some reason goes in the toilet whenever you fight anything big in any of these big encounters. And it's just not fun to play like that at all, not fun to capture. So instead I play on a different setting where I sacrifice some of the HUD, but I managed to get it at a much higher resolution, as you can see, and the frame rate it says when I'm capturing is 60 frames per second, and the emulator says it's 60 frames per second, but there are moments when I'm playing where it really doesn't feel like it is, but that might just because it's a PS2 game. So, it's rife with problems, the emulation. Like, I can't see the cutscenes, and I'm skipping them, which I would have been doing anyway. Every time I come back in, my HUD is all pinked out. It's really annoying. I have to mess with the plugins every time to remove it. So it's a bit of a hassle to play, and I'm pretty much playing it. The only reason so far is for my love of Berserk. And I've put up some videos on Expert, and I got to this level that you're watching right now on Expert, and I decided to give it up as a bad job. Because this game is very, very hard, but not really in the way that I'm used to. For instance, you might notice in them videos, I take a big beating, and on the hardest difficulty you don't expect it. But so do the enemies, the bosses, you do no damage, even when you hit them with counters and all sorts of crazy stuff. It's this really weird tango of nonsense. But where the difficulty comes from is there's no checkpoints at all in the entire game. All there are save points, and the save points are insanely spaced apart. They literally have turned the entire fun of the game into this linear, boring, Dynasty Warriors-esque bullshit sequence of fights that you're watching right now, and then a boss fight that's really fun and interesting, but there's no checkpoints. So if you die on the boss fight, you will go back to where you've saved, and you could have saved 2 levels ago. And there's only 6 levels in the game, and what they do with the level design is, as you've seen on this, I got to a fence which I couldn't get past, a little tiny picket fence. I couldn't break it with my giant sword, I couldn't climb over it like a sensible adult. I have to go to like 5 of these camps on the map and do these massive fights against these, it seems like endlessly respawning enemies, which admittedly they are kind of like a popcorn enemy where most of them die in one hit, but it's just these massive endurance, and this right now is on easy or normal. It's on one of the lower difficulties, and it still takes forever. On Expert, like, it takes even longer because you start getting beaten up because the game is unfortunately not as responsive as it needs to be for the kind of combat it's asking of you. And then when you get low on life where you're about to die, if you do die, you go back to the beginning of the level, and I have this trick where I run in a circle and use puck to heal myself and then go back in and fight, then run around. It is literally the most boring thing to play and the most boring thing to watch, and all in the name of playing it on the harder difficulty, where I think the game is designed for you to be fully upgraded, because believe it or not, but Guts actually fights better and faster and more responsively when you're upgrading. But to upgrade him, it's incredibly expensive, so you spend a massive amount of time being an inferior version of the character because they've tied his abilities into upgrades, which is a massive mistake. Like, look at the level design, it's just... it is so bad. I can't even describe how heartbreaking it is. Because I think everybody right now, regardless of if you have a childhood place in your heart for this game, you have to acknowledge it's bad. You know? And it's such a shame because Berserk is such a fantastic license. It really is. It's a great piece of fiction. And this game does have some qualities, it does some things right. I love the fact that they've made the sword feel weighted, and I love the directional combat. And you'll see it here when I fight some of these enemies, because this is a mandatory fight. So this is a charge Y move. Not really the most useful thing because it's slow as hell, but it does kill a lot of folks. But what I'm doing here is, it looks like I'm just bashing X, and for most I am. But you can time your presses and it feels a little bit more satisfying. And also, if you press forward and X, Guts will swing that way. If you press back, he'll do a spinning animation and swing that way. And you can have him swinging in different directions, and it looks pretty cool and pretty interesting. But the problems come when you want to avoid damage. Like, there's a dash move, which you just saw me do then, which looks really interesting, but watch. You see all that? That was recovery frames. And at first I was thinking, well, he's got this massive sword and they want to give it this illusion of weight, but if you just tap X, you'll swing forever, and you can swing and recover quicker than when you dash. So the choice is to just mash X and fight everything up close and maintain that speed, or try to avoid, like you would, what you would think would be, you know, better levels of play, more skillful, and then you get punished by an amazing amount of recovery frames. So it just turns like evading into something that's not worth doing. And the alternative to this is to block, where the block on this game is really interesting actually. It's got this counter and reversal system, where if you block the moment you're about to be hit, you will do a counter animation, which is a very powerful attack, and usually against certain big enemies it gives it its unique animation, which is really cool, really fun. Problem is, on Expert they do no damage at all, so you can do it a million times against a boss, and it's not the best thing to watch when you just see the same animation and animation and animation, and it's such a shame because it's a really cool idea. And then the reversal system is a little bit different. If you take damage, if you press block as you take the damage, he'll do a reversal slash where I think you take a little bit less damage and then you deal a powerful attack. The only problem with this move is sometimes it just doesn't do it in the direction you're facing, the direction you're holding, the direction you're locked on, so you'll mess with it and it's kind of confusing. But just look at this, folks. This is happening. Like, a million endlessly spawning enemies all the time, and this is a mandatory fight. And you just get to the point where it isn't fun at all. Like, I've wanted to stop playing this game so many times, but my love of Berserk wants me to get to the bosses because I know they're kind of fun. And it's where the game really shines. But the level design is some of the worst I've ever played. And it's a shame because the secondary features, the crossbow, the cannon, the throwing knives, the bombs, all things that Guts uses in the manga, are all present here and quite interesting, but it's just everything else that's lacking. Like, he looks good, the visuals are pretty tasty. It's just such a strange game, and I wanted to make this commentary so that you could understand where I'm coming from, folks, and I am going to try and bring you some of the boss fights, but they will be on a lower difficulty because it's just not any fun to play. And it just leaves me wondering, how the hell do these licenses not get picked up by somebody who would really give them, you know, the justice they deserve? Imagine a Santa Monica Studios, you know, the guys that brought you God of War covering this kind of game. They would make it so well. Imagine Clover back in the day. If Clover made this would be one of my all-time favourite games ever made. You know, Platinum, at this moment in time, to me, are the best company that exists because they make the best action games. I would love to say Team Ninja, but now that Itagaki's gone, we all know where that company's going, and it ain't good. But if you love Berserk, you might want to try this out. It's worth playing if you're a super fan. But if you're somebody who appreciates good games, then I literally cannot recommend this, because there's so many cool ideas mired down by the fact that the level design and everything else that's in it is just severely lacking. And it's a massive shame, but something different on the channel, something, you know, that the more eclectic folk out there might enjoy. And yeah, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and as always, you take care now.